All right, so Charles S. Dutton, brother, thank you for this interview, and how are you doing?
I'm doing pretty good. I'm doing pretty good. I'm actually in Santa Fe, New Mexico right now, finishing a project, and I'll be back on the East Coast on Sunday night. So
Yes, sir.
I'm doing pretty good. Yeah.
Wow, beautiful, man. Wow, I know you definitely stay busy.
Well, I try. I've been blessed to eke out a career in this industry, and a career that I've tried all of these years to control and dictate and choose the kind of material that I want to do, and
Yes, sir.
so far I've been able to do that.
Yes, sir, man, and that's beautiful. That definitely, I want to talk to you a little bit about that. And you hit the ground running in 1984. You made your debut in August Wilson's May Rainey's Black Bottom, and you got nominated for the Tony Award out the back.
Yeah, yeah. As I said, I've been really, really blessed, man. I had when I had turned my life around, I sort of went from jail to Yale,
Yes, sir.
But when I graduated out of Yale School of Drama in '83, I didn't really have a long struggling actor, career. I maybe from the time I graduated, I'd say 7, 8 months later, I was starring on Broadway.
Wow, that's amazing.
And, I met August Wilson in 1982, and then in '84, I was starring in the show. And that was, just, one of those things where, you go to your grave, man, with those memories, because, you're right out of the box, and you're starring on a Broadway show, and it's a hit. And you're in New York City when you're a star on Broadway, boy, you own the apple.
Yes, sir.
But the key is that you don't get intoxicated with that kind of stuff. That you don't get a big head about it or ego about it. But everywhere you go, it's like the red carpet treatment.
Right.
I don't think the whole year we ran on Broadway, I don't think I paid for one dinner in a restaurant. I would love to have those days all the time, but
right.
You're really treated with royalty, so to speak, and but it was also special because you think back on your life, you think back where you are at that moment, and how you thought you would never really achieve anything in life, or, let alone be, the center of all this kind of attention. You might have been center of negative attention, before that, but now it's all this positive stuff. So, and then from there, my career sort of started in 1984, and then I did another play on Broadway in 1990. August Wilson's play Piano Lesson, and it was the same kind of feeling then, albeit it was 6 years after the first one, but it was still just a glorious time almost. I had a wonderful cast in both productions, and everybody was on the same page artistically about making the production in the play the best it could be each and every night, and you don't get those kind of situations in the theater, but a couple of times in your lifetime.
Yes, sir.
A few times in your lifetime where there's no egos, there's no prima donnas, there's no divas, there's no I'm the star. Everybody's working for one purpose, and that is to advance civilization through work.
Wow. That's a wonderful
we all
statement.
felt that every night we could change somebody's life in that audience.
Yes, sir.
That's the way we felt. Somebody was coming in with problems or negative thoughts or misdirection or non-directions. We thought if we did that play to the fullest, we could get that person in that audience or persons in that audience to discover or rediscover their humanities after they watch that performance.
Wow.
And you know, and it wasn't the kind of thing, we weren't doing it idealistically like we were trying to save the world.
Mm-hmm.
We just all felt that as stage artists, your task in life is to advance civilization.
Yes, sir.
To get people to understand their own humanities and their own humanity and to care about things in the community and you know, really, you know, really be in tune with the transforming power of the arts.
Yes, sir.
You know, and so you don't get those kind of situations. You know, you do a play, man. You can do a play most of the time. You can't wait for it to be over so you can get away the hell away from the rest of the cast.
Right,
You know?
right.
So,
That's right.
but I've had some. I've been lucky, you know, and every theater person of any repute will tell you that you only get a couple of those in a lifetime.
Mm-hmm.
You know,
Wow.
and I happen to get two of them. You know, those two in particular, and I had some more in smaller ways and in less less center of attention ways. But
Mm-hmm.
you know, but those two were the two that I, you know, and that's where the rock cast came from. The second play, the piano lesson.
Oh, wow.
You know,
Yes, sir.
because when I developed the show Rock with the producers, and you know, they wanted to, you know, audition a lot of stand-up comics and to play my brother and father, you know, and wife, you know, and they wanted to, you know, surround me with all these stand-up comics.
Mm-hmm.
And I said, no, I need three actors.
Right. Yes, sir.
I said,
It
you
made
know,
a
I
difference.
said, if we got good writers, I said, the three people I picked, they'll make it funny.
Yes, sir.
You know, and so the easiest choice for me was to pick Carl Gordon as my father, to play Pops as Rock, who had played my uncle in the piano lesson,
Mm-hmm.
and to pick Rocky Carroll to play my brother Joey in Rock because he played my best buddy in as a character in the piano lesson. So,
Yes, sir.
and that's why when the show was on the air, people really thought that we were a family because of the chemistry. But the chemistry had grown over 3 years of doing the play, the piano lesson.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so we were really in tune with each other, and you know, you go through this, you know, these careers, and if you get lucky to have one, I just never wanted, where television was concerned, particularly half-hour television.
Mm-hmm.
I just was always concerned about 10 years after a show was off the air, and you're in your kitchen having dinner, whatever, and a rerun comes on, and you're with your family, and then your family is, you know, older, your children are older, whatever, and you look at yourself on television and you be embarrassed by it.
Wow.
You
So
know,
you had that foresight even at that
Oh
moment.
yeah, I mean, because I'd already seen enough reruns of shows that embarrassed me, and I wasn't even in them.
Yes, sir.
You know what I mean? So I said, you know, I don't ever want that to happen to me. You know, regardless of the money they throw at you, regardless of the fleeting, the fleeting so-called fame you get when you're doing it. You know,
Yes, sir.
I want to be able to sit back 10 years from now and say that was a good show. You know, we had a really good time with that show, and so you know, when so over the years, you know, the short period of 3 seasons doing Rock, I always crafted those stories,
Mm-hmm.
you know, or had the writers craft those stories with that in mind. That 20 years from now, I want to be able to watch this and then let the shows and the episodes and the storylines still have
Relevance.
you know,
So, but you
in
sound
20
like
years later.
you sound a little different than it seems like most artists, a lot of artists, and sometimes regardless of color, are just going to take what is given to them because they're happy for the moment and the chance. But you exhibited a level of control over your career and destiny, that is absolutely wonderful.
Well, also too, I didn't start off, as you know, I didn't start off as the average person coming into Hollywood or whatever.
Right.
I spent my life as an outlaw.
Yes, sir.
Many years before any of that Hollywood stuff happened. So I had already had a sense of a worldview, so to speak. I mean, I was in the Black Panther Party in the 1960s. I raised hell in the streets. I spent 12 years in and out of penal institutions.
Yes, sir.
7.5 years the last time I was in. I discovered theater in prison. I discovered the arts in prison.
With the anthology of black playwrights.
Yeah, absolutely. Day of Absence by Douglas Turner Ward. I read that play and said, I'm gonna get the craziest guys in the prison, and we're gonna put it on as a prison talent show. And I got the craziest knuckleheads. I got the biggest liars, the most demonstrative guys, the funniest guys that could crack you up, make you laugh, and 9 or 10 guys, and we put on the prison and we put the play on in the prison talent show. And
that sounds like closet actors. The biggest liars, the funniest, the craziest.
And,
you got the right people.
Yeah, right, absolutely. So we was like, so when I finally got into, the industry, I kind of had I don't know, I guess you could call it a kind of internal buffer.
Yes, sir.
To ward off bullshit, or to ward off, any kind of. I mean, I could see things before they came.
Right, right.
And I already had a sense of purpose.
Yes, sir.
What I wanted to do, and what my image, what I wanted my image to be, and it was important to me. It really was, it was. And as I was telling the cast, I said, listen, that's why we may not last long, because it's important to me that we wield this little bit of power we have on national television, and it is a little bit of power. But I don't want these rock episodes to go out once they leave the United States and other countries start seeing them. Because when you put a show on in the States, in the States, other countries only get them a year or so later. And particularly third world countries. The powers that be, the Britons, the Frances, et cetera, of the world, the Germanys, they may get them first run. But really the rest of the world, 85-90% of the rest of the world get them, in their second or third seasons once they're already been on air. And I said, I don't want this show to be a kind of image of negative, a negative image.
Yes, sir.
Of black people internationally. I don't want anybody to look at this show and assume that this is how black folks act.
Right.
Or this is how this is why they're reviled and disliked. I wanted to project an image of strength and intelligence and heart and also a warrior-like quality.
Yes, sir.
That this family didn't take no crap.
Right.
And they were concerned about their community.
Right.
So when you do that, you got to be prepared. You have to be, prepared to say no to things. And
yes,
sometimes
sir.
it could be, at the cost of something lucrative. But you draw your line of demarcation in the sand, and you say, this is what I stand for. And if you step across it, you better stand for it too.
Yes, sir.
Or else we're gonna have a problem. So, but I don't begrudge. Well, I used to in my younger days begrudge people who didn't take the stand. However, now I look at it. It's I just they see things differently, and that's on them.
Mm-hmm.
You know, that's
Right.
on them to deal with. That's on them to, you know, for the families to deal with, and because at a time, black performers could only do certain things.
Right. Right.
But as those times went along, you know, we didn't, you know, you didn't have to do those things, but some black folks still wanted to do those things.
Right. Right.
Still wanted to make sure that they did silly, nonsensical stuff to get the next job.
Right. Right.
You know, make sure Master knew that I ain't starting no trouble, sir. You know, and so they can get the next job. And that didn't include just the actors. That included the writers and directors and everything else that were black. You know, the more lowbrowed you kept your material, the more apt that you may get hired again.
Yes, sir.
So, you know, and so it's intoxicating. You know what I mean? You know, the money that they threw at you in those days. You know, you start buying all the trimmings with that money, the house and the cars, and now you got to pay for it.
You got to pay for it, right?
You know, and so you know, you keep doing what they give you, and you know, you get caught up in it, and then when they want to drop you, they drop you.
They drop you, right?
You know, and they drop you with all the bills. You gotta pay, you know?
Right.
So if you're gonna eventually go out, you might as well go out on your terms.
That's right. That's
you
right.
know, and leave the kind of legacy or leave the kind of sense of pride and epitaph that you set out to do. You know, and because they're not going to leave it for you.
Right.
You know, you
That's
got to
right.
make that yourself. You know.
That's right. So that's beautiful. And now we're in the age of the internet, with a lot of different technologies out there and mediums. If you were breaking into the business today with YouTube and videos, would you do anything different? And what advice would you give to young actors who are trying to produce and be producers and directors and not just actors, rather?
Well, you know, the beauty of, you know, now compared to then is that the canvas is so much larger. You know what I mean?
That's right.
The outlets are so many, 1,000-fold now. You're not confined to 4 networks.
Right.
You know, you used to be confined to 3, ABC, NBC, CBS, and then along comes Fox, and everybody thought, oh, they'll never make it because they'll never supplant or be equal to the big 3. But
Right.
then Fox did, and then you had CW Network and UPN, and then, you know, they'll never work it. And then if you notice,
Right.
the last 3 I mentioned all catered, when they first started, they all catered to the urban audience.
They sure did.
Until they got white folks watching them, and then they could drop their urban shows.
Right. That's right.
You know?
That's right.
And so that was the formula. You know, play to the urban market to get some ratings, to make a couple dollars, and then once we get, you know, white American males watching our shows, we can, you know, let the inner city, let the urban audience go.
Right.
But then as the years went on, you had all the social media and everything, and then you know, you can, you know, it would be great to be starting again in this particular time and era, because you don't necessarily have to rely on someone else to create your career. I mean, you know, there's, you know, you could, you know, just with a little money and a camera, you could, you know, get your own, you know, webcam and web nets and build you a character or storyline that you know, just on the internet, on the web, that you know, people tune into, you know, and you can sell yourself and you can sell your stories, and so in that regard, you know, it is absolutely, you know, fantastic.
Yes, sir.
The thing is, the thing always goes back to this, though. What are you putting on the air?
Right.
You know, what messages are you trying to send? You know, so no, you know, I would tell any young artist coming up today that they have to be able to use all of those tools now. You know, it's like
Beautiful.
you know, you don't have to, you know, it's not a sense of pounding the payments as much anymore, you know, or relying so much on your agent. You know, you there's other outlets to promote yourself.
Yes, sir.
And when you get enough hits on the internet and enough attention on the internet, you know, you can show that to a studio and say, this is what we do, and this is how much following we have.
That's
and
right.
then, you know, people pay attention to numbers.
That's right.
You know, studios pay attention to numbers, and that's the way that we're promoting the Obama effect, and it's the way I'm going to promote my latest film. I've got called. I just finished called "Must Be the Music." You know, we're going to do it through the social media first, and get the hype going, and then look for distribution later. You know,
Yes,
but
sir.
we want to get the hype going with the internet first, and then we can leapfrog the middleman, or we can leapfrog any tentacles that say you have to do it this way, you have to do it that way. You know.
That's right.
And I've come to be, you know, I was, you know, look, I'm old school, so I was a little stubborn about that too. You know, in other words, sticking to the more traditional ways.
Right.
You know, but I had a couple of young partners in Philadelphia on this Must Be the Music movie, and they, you know, they're 20 years younger than I am.
Right,
you know?
right.
And these guys were music guys, and they were saying, "No, Unc, you gotta promote it this way." And I'm like, "Nah, man, you see, you gotta get a publicist, you gotta get that." But then I had to back up, man, and say, you know what, you know, okay, I've seen the light.
Yes,
You know?
sir. That's beautiful.
I've seen the light. You young folks know what the hell y'all doing, you know, and it was refreshing. And,
Yes, sir.
and you know, and nice, you know, because, you know, had they listened to me, we would have still been in the sandbox.
Yes,
you
sir.
know? But you know, they didn't, and I listened to them, and you know, and now we've got, you know, a lot of you know, heat starting to get focused on that other project.
Yes, sir.
You know? But
well, we got
but, you know,
40,000 people on our network through our radio show, our email. So we definitely, of course, are going to share this with them, and anything that you're doing. We are a welcome outlet. We would love to always hear from you and supporting the projects you're doing.
I appreciate it.
Yes, sir. So also, man, it's so many things. I'm going to talk to you about the Obama effect, but I'm on Facebook as we're talking, and I told people we were doing interviews, so people are sending questions.
Okay.
Man, people are really excited. And one thing I want to mention, because I do contributing to the Final Call newspaper, and the editor of the Final Call is from Baltimore. So he got real excited when I told him I was talking to you.
Yeah.
Now he had a question about the I don't know if it was the Day of Absence, but you were working on a film similar to the Day of Absence, or about black people starting a country in America.
Oh, you know, that was actually that's interesting. I'm glad he asked that question. That sort of got not misinterpreted, but it kind of started a life of its own, where I was having a conversation about an idea I had.
Yes, sir.
And people assumed that it was something that I was already working on or about to come out, because it was right after The Corner, the HBO miniseries The Corner.
Yes.
And I was doing a couple of interviews about an idea I had that would be very, very, very controversial, and very, very, very the total opposite of a show like Roots, but it would have that kind of power.
Yes, sir.
And as I was talking about the idea, it was all about a particular city in any city in the country that was undergoing a lot of crime, et cetera, and the city officials or the state officials decided to actually isolate this particular area in a city and fence it in. physically fence it in. And everything I got from the idea, I was actually getting from stuff that was already happening.
Yes, sir.
There was an incident there was a situation in Washington D.C. where they actually did that for a couple of months. They didn't physically fence it in, but they sent in the state federal troopers,
yes,
etc.
Sir.
And you needed an ID to get in and out of this particular community.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
To prove that you lived there. And so I was gathering up a lot of information and formulating this idea. And within this sort of confined area, the people inside it started to really, within this area, started to change it from within. And of course, in change, there's sometimes bloodshed. In change, there's upheaval. But when the smoke cleared, this community that was so violently hellish had now changed into be sort of very, very, very positive.
Yes, sir.
And so the bigger picture was they were basically allowed to get their own state. You know, they lobbied for their own state in actuality. You know, and it took this upheaval and everything else from being forced to isolate. And once this isolation started and they overturned the negative stuff and it became a positive world within it, they then wanted to expand that, and they went to the government and demanded and sued and quit courts or whatever to get a southern state of their own, or a partial area of a state. And part of it, of course, was of the idea was in a sort of a fantasy kind of way. But the idea was something that that germinated from Marcus Garvey to the Liberia movement. I mean, it had all kinds of historical vegetables in the pot.
Yes, sir.
And as I was forming the idea and talking about it, and just talking about it casually the way we're talking about it, some people on certain black radio stations ran with it, saying that, oh, Dutton is doing this movie about black folks being forced to live in a certain area. And then for some reason, some people start putting a negative spin on it, you know, and so instead of chasing all of the, because everybody started coming out of the woodwork wanting to talk to me about it, the Jesse and Al, Reverend Sharpton, and a host of other people, and I was basically saying, wait a minute, slow down, guys. This ain't nothing I'm in production on. This is something that I'm actually considering writing, and a project like that could take 10 years to come to fruition. But it had its own life, but it was interesting hearing the comments on the radio stations, particularly in Baltimore, because people, it was pros and cons to it, but people were responding to it without really knowing the complete essence of it.
Right. Yes, sir. Yes,
they were responding on something they heard on a sound bite or something they heard somebody else say. And but in essence, what was nice in listening to certain people's response to it, and those responses only knew the little that they knew, but I could see that they had a sense that this was something that was grounded in historical reality. That this was something that this idea had been floating since the first slave landed on the American soil.
Right, that's right.
And so
we need our own.
Absolutely, our own. And so those in the know, those who were historically savvy, those who were intelligent, they knew just where I was coming from.
Yes, sir.
And those who were responding to a limited knowledge, I ain't gonna, they ain't gonna put me in no goddamn fence. You know what I mean? I'll shoot my way out of there.
Right.
So it was, and my response to some of it was kind of funny, because I said, if all the, I said, well, with attitudes like that, I wonder how we ended up in slavery. Because
right.
If everybody claim I ain't gonna do shit, ain't gonna make me pick no cotton. I said
right.
we wouldn't have been picking no cotton, So
right.
so I just found some of the reactions funny, but I do remember one of the Muslim brothers in Baltimore making some inquiries to my cousin to get a hold of me on it. And I don't recall if I ever got back to him, but I remember I think hearing him or someone from the mosque there talking about it and in a positive way.
Yes, sir.
And in that sense of our own.
Yes, sir.
And that's what it was about. So tell the brother I said I really appreciate it, and when we finish the interview, I'm going to give you my personal info to give to him as well.
Okay, beautiful, excellent. He'll love that. Man, yeah, it's just so much I want to talk to you about. Do you still have a farm?
Yeah, I'm still in Maryland. Yeah, I'm still right outside of Baltimore. I had sold my place in L.A. and moved back east, and I mean, there may be times when I'm on the farm for 3 months out of the year or 4 months out of the year. Then sometimes I'm on there for 7 months out of the year. Just depends on my schedule.
Yes, sir.
I've cut down on the like the scope of it. I wanted to fancy myself as a farmer, but I wasn't no real farmer. I thought I was a real farmer, but so I cut down on the number of animals, and I was trying to do. It just became an expensive hobby.
Yes, sir.
Because I was trying to do things and was doing things the right way. I had some cattle and chickens and et cetera, but I was only feeding them organic feed. I wasn't buying any outside feed. I was feeding them what I grew on my own land. So it was grass-fed and organic grain-fed beef and free-range chickens and hold on one second. Can you hold on 1 second?
Yes, sir. Absolutely.
And I never bought the farm to try to make it a livelihood. It was just something that I enjoyed doing, and so I was wind up giving away more stuff than I was actually selling, So,
yes,
but it was fine because I was donating to homeless shelters and churches, and my family, of course, my mom and aunts, boy, they would come up there about a busload.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
The old folks, and they get collard greens.
Right. I know how they do.
I was doing absolutely. I was doing everything I could in a very healthy way.
Right. That's beautiful.
Putting any pesticides on anything, and everything I was doing. If I was spraying, it was with an herbicide and a natural herbicide. So and so in a way I kind of got locked up into that life for a minute, and I was turning down work, and then I had to have those real reality sessions with my business manager about, look, what do you want this farm for? Because you're certainly not making any money off of it.
Right.
So, and so then it just became too much of an operation, and I cut back a lot. Cut back on the number of animals and the more land you have, the more you have to maintain.
The more you got to maintain.
So,
right.
So I cut back a little bit, and still have a small operation, but it's one now that's handleable, that I can handle it, and if I'm away, I don't have to worry about 1,000 things going wrong.
Right.
I just have to worry about 500 things going wrong.
Right. Yeah, man, that's beautiful. Yeah, I was getting ready to say, the Minister Farrakhan just reopened Salon Restaurant. It'll be open next week, and getting all of our product exclusively from our farm and from black farmers throughout the country.
Yes.
So you may better take a few cows off your hand. Of course, we're gonna have beef and lamb And chicken.
Of course, absolutely, absolutely. You know, I mean, it's you know when you just sidebarring that for a second. You know, I mean, you know, we've kind of lost the importance of land ownership
right. Yes,
over the past 50 years.
Yeah,
you know?
that's right.
You know, and you know, and sometimes it's been, you know, for black farmers, you know, I mean, you know, it's bad for any farmer in the country because the corporations own all the big farms.
That's
but
right.
for the individual family farmer, it's really tough.
Really
and
rough.
for the black family farmer, it's you know, it's impossible.
Right.
You know, but you know, when I think back, even with my own family, when I think back on the land my uncles used to own, you know, down in Virginia and stuff, and I used to say, you know, and I was 10 years ago, I was asking my mom and aunt, what happened to all that land? Oh, they sold it, you know. And I think back on that and I say, you know, I mean, that's one thing you got to keep your hands on.
That's right.
Know?
That's right.
And no matter if you don't do anything to it, you know, if you got a little money to spend, and particularly in the Deep South where stuff is still not that expensive,
right.
you know, where you can still get a good deal for not, you know, not like you buying land in upstate New York somewhere, you know, but you know, those are investments that you can sit on. Even if you don't want to turn it into a farm, those are investments that you could sit on for decades.
Right, that's
right.
You
know, and eventually, you know, as things go, you know, when the powers that be want to build something or put something on it, you know, you are in such a power position to, you know, to turn that dollar over, you know, 1,000 times profit,
that's
or
right.
say, you know what, I'm gonna clear this land and I'm gonna grow something on it, you know.
That's right. That's right.
And you know, and I think we, you know, we as a people, you know, have to get back in tune to that. You know, everything is bricks and mortar. You know, when you got the dirt right there.
Right. That's right.
And and I didn't particularly go into mine with that kind of a forethought. In historically, I just sort of said I want to live out my boyhood dream of owning a farm, you know.
Wow.
And then when I got it, it was a question then of not being a farmer. I didn't know what the heck I was doing, you know. So a lot of people saw me coming before I got there, and the price went up 10 times more than it was really, you know.
Right,
so,
right.
You know, I go into a store. They say, "Oh, Mr. Dutton, you need this, that, and that, and that, and that," and I'm buying all this, and it didn't need half of it, you know. But you know, you learn your lessons as you go, and but I always, you know, I'm even, you know, I'm definitely in tune to getting involved on a larger scale now. You know, now that I've done it, you know, in the scale that I've done it in Maryland, you know, I've been thinking over the last 3, 4, 5 years of, you know, purchasing more property, et cetera, and you know, and having that kind of land to start produce on, you know, and really good, you know, good, you know, good, and you know, the thing about it is, you know, it's you know, when you think of all the cancers that are going on, you know, and all the diseases, you know, and it's in the food.
That's right.
It's in the food, you know. It's in the food that they're generating, or they're spraying, or they're, you know, and having you know, having been in the business in the little small way that I've been in, and been able to observe, you know, it's absolutely wicked what they'll sell to the American consumer. You know, tell them it's healthy when it isn't.
Yes, sir.
You know, and so, you know, it's good. It's really good to see that people are, you know, every 5-10 years, and I mean this a lot. Every 5-10 years, I go back to, I read once again. I don't really need to read it because you know, I mean, I know it, but every 5 years or so, I'll pick up and reread How to Eat to Live.
Yes, sir.
And I'll say to myself, man, look, this was true. It's 50, you know, I mean, you know, decades ago.
Yes,
you know,
sir.
Even before he wrote the book, you know, before the book was written. But what he was saying, you know, how to eat to live, you know. and so it's always good to you go back over the elders' wisdom.
Yes, sir.
You know, our elders'
That's right.
wisdoms, and see that, you know, that what they were saying had so much relevance and was so true. I mean, it was just like you know, with your own mom and father, mother and father, or if you lived in a single household, just your mom, or any parent that always told you, look, you're not going anywhere without being educated.
That's
You
right.
remember them days, you know,
Yes,
and
sir.
it became a cliche, you know.
Right.
You need an education. It was like you just stopped listening to it, paying no mind. But lo and behold, boy, you think about it, you ain't going nowhere in this life without some knowledge.
Without some knowledge, that's right.
You know, you go nowhere in this life without some knowledge. You know, now you can think the knowledge that you have is enough, you know what I mean, in
Right.
your little world, in the 3-block radius of your neighborhood, if whatever you're doing in that 3-block radius. But that's not any real knowledge. You know, you need worldly knowledge.
That's right.
You need knowledge. I mean, and even as an actor, I tell actors, young actors, I tell young actors all the time, that you can't just be an actor. I say you gotta be an intelligent actor.
Come on.
I say you gotta know about world events.
That's
You gotta know
right.
about history. You
Go
gotta
ahead.
know about
Teach 'em
geography. You gotta know about science.
Mm-hmm.
You know, I said an actor encompasses, you know, a life. You know,
That's
and
right. That's right.
so you just can't be talented. You know, you've got to be. You know, you have to have a sense of. You have to have a depth of understanding humanity.
Right.
You
That's
know,
beautiful.
in life. You know, and speaking of an intelligent actress, and one I have conversations with a couple of times a month, is Shakira. Shahira Farrakhan, you know, the minister's granddaughter.
Yeah.
You know, and I'm trying to help her out with different things, and we speak once or twice a month
that's beautiful.
on the phone. And she's an intelligent young woman with
She
a great
is.
sense of purpose and
Just talked to her
knowledge.
a couple
and,
days ago. She's amazing.
Oh, yeah, okay, yeah. Matter of fact, I owe her a call, you know, so
Yes, sir.
she called me a couple of days ago, and I haven't been able to get back with her because of my schedule. But, no, I so enjoyed talking with her, and because it's very refreshing to hear a young person, you know, talk about life in the world and art.
Right.
The way she talks about it,
Yes,
you know,
sir.
and what she wants to do with her life and the art that she wants to represent, you know. So it's always refreshing. But go ahead. I know you got some more questions.
Man, that's beautiful, man. No, I'm loving it. You know, I mean, I do want to make sure that we talk a little bit about the Obama effect and how you got involved with that, with this movie.
Well, you know, Brother Barry Hankerson, you know, called
Yes.
me right after. I think it was right before the election,
Mm-hmm.
and in 2008, and he said, you know, I got this idea, Brother Charles, and he started telling me the idea about, you know, said, you know, whoever, you know, we should be the first people out of the block to do something on Obama. And this was before, you know, the actual election. So, and I was saying, well, you know, let's, you know, okay, I said, let's both think about it, and if he wins, let's come up with a story.
Yes, sir.
And then we didn't know what the story was going to be, you know, and so after winning, you know, we got together again, and Barry threw his ideas at me, and I threw mine back at him, and so, you know, what ultimately became the story about the 2008 election really became a story about a guy who is so obsessed and so intertwined into this historical moment,
Right. Yes, sir.
and so wrapped up in it that it and that it becomes an obsession that to help get this man elected, to see this first time historical moment, that the obsession becomes so rabid in
Yes,
a way
sir. Yes,
that
sir.
it borders on a little bit of madness, not wicked madness or tragic madness, but it borders on a sense of his that's his sole purpose.
Yes, sir.
This moment in time and history, and it's to the mild detriment, and I say that on purpose, a mild detriment to everything else in his life. You know, his own family, his children, his friends, his business, his job, his work, because he neglects all of that. Because he's so wrapped up in this moment.
Right. Quits his job.
And absolutely he quits his job. You know, he goes into his own bank account when his wife finds out that they're broke, because instead of waiting for the national committee to send money to his communities where he's the local campaign manager, if people need flyers and if people need this, that, he just writes a check himself, you know, and expects to get reimbursed, but doesn't bother to ask to be reimbursed because he is so wrapped up in this moment.
Right.
And for me, what it was writing about a time in my own history, in my own life. You know, I'm a child of the 60s, so I can remember how great that decade was. Tumultuous as it was, historical as it was, tragic as it was, revolutionary and radical as it was, that was just a wonderful, wonderful decade.
Yes,
you know, of upheaval and but yet progression. You know, and sort of in your face, in the government's face, everyday existence. You know, you woke up in the morning and there was 100,000 people in the street somewhere, in some city. You know,
somewhere.
As soon as you turn on the television, there was some kind of movement going on, and so I kind of thought of the character that way. That this is his, historical moment.
Yes,
you know,
sir.
and although the character was old enough to be around in the 60s, but maybe, you know, he was one of those people in the 60s that just kind of rolled with the punches and didn't get involved, you know. So that's what the movie is about. The movie is about rekindling all of that passion and all of that euphoria of 2008.
Yes, sir.
And so it's not about Obama per se, although we do have an Obama character in the film, but the Obama character appears and reappears only in the head of the main character. In his obsession, he's got this Obama character is now an alter ego, and so he sees Obama, he talks to Obama, you know, and he takes advice, and so it's not your average, everyday, straightforward film. It's a film with a lot of great cinematic ideas in it, a lot of great storytelling in it. It's also a film about getting one's own health together, because in a series of heart attacks, that this character has, he's got to, you know, he's physically got to get himself together to be able to enjoy this historical moment.
Yes,
so
sir.
It definitely sends a message to black men about going to the doctor, you know, about losing weight, about eating right, you know, about taking care of yourself. And,
he needed Obamacare.
Absolutely. Obamacare or somebody's care. You just make sure you get some care going, you know, you know, I mean, because I even watch my own father, you know what I mean?
Yes,
He's
sir.
like, I'll go next week. I'll go next year. Ain't nothing wrong with me. I'm all right. Just a little chest pain, you know. And then drop dead at 40 years old of a heart attack, you know.
Yes,
my
sir.
mom trying to get him to go to get a checkup, and he didn't want to go, you know. So, so you know, it's you know, that's the way I like to frame the conversation about it. That it's about rekindling, reliving, you know, because we all, you know, and listen, you know, I got no problems about people throwing questions at me. Well, what do I feel about the result of it? You know,
Right. Yes,
there's been some major disappointments. You know, I'll be the first to say that, and there's been major disappointments, and there's been some there've been some high notes of achievement. I don't necessarily think that his team or his cabinet or his staff or the Democratic Party as a whole are good at all about making sure that the public is aware of the high
Of the highs, right.
You know,
Give me examples of a high and a low that you see.
Absolutely. You know, the easiest things are the obvious. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So, so he followed through on the military and got Osama bin Laden and the obvious things of that nature that's on television every day.
Mm-hmm.
But the smaller things that have a lot to do with the larger aspects of everyday life, you know, the Democratic Party is, you know, the Democratic Party could really use the balls of the Republican Party.
Right. Yes, sir.
You know what I mean?
I know exactly
or
what
the
you're saying. Right.
Or the gangster attitude of the Republican Party.
Right. Yes, sir.
You know, the Republican Party does. You know, they're gangsters with the way they're going to get stuff done. You know, and the Democrats are, you know, sometimes in their liberalism, you know, they become ballless.
Yes, sir.
You know, and so so you know, I don't. This is not a picture, although it's about a satirical look at the 2008 election.
Mm-hmm.
It's still relevant and pertinent to today's election.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
But I don't gauge it for anybody to say, well, look, you know, this is what you should do. This is how you should vote. I simply say, look, well, you know the score. You know, in any presidential election, it always comes down to the lesser of two evils.
Right.
You know, any presidential election.
Always does.
And I think in the scope of the 2008, what we as black people, the only thing we really had, and hopefully, I don't want to say it's the only thing that we come out of this with, but the only thing we really had was the euphoria, the passion, the historical moment, and all of that. People's feelings about the success or failure of his presidency for the first term, you know. Now, but we all understand and know, you know, the pot he was given when you know.
That's right.
When he took over the pot, you know.
Right.
But that's also, you know, part of the job. You
right.
know?
That's right.
You know? But at the same time, I look at it this way. All it took was for a person of color to get into the presidency to actually revive all of the wickedness of that half of the country, that was going to come out, you know, and you know, come out of their hoods and their and their sheets and forget about being, you know, known now. You know, it took that to get it to this point. So you have to, you know, I mean, listen, it's an easy decision for me to come to the fact that the vehement reaction to him is because of who it is and not because of policy. You know, it's because of who it is. You know. Now, granted, if Hillary Clinton had won, there would have probably been the same kind of vehement reaction on a personal level because they hated the Clintons.
Right.
But you know, it wouldn't be any, you know, I don't think you'd find any effany of hanging Hillary Clinton by the neck.
That's right.
You know,
that's right.
Or she wouldn't be, you know, she wouldn't be depicted in blackface.
Right.
And as a monkey and on and on and on and on and on. You know.
Nobody threatening to leave the country and start their own state.
Absolutely. Right. Absolutely. So, you know, so granted that backlash, you know, and all of the historical firsts. In other words, there's never been in the country's history where a Congress has refused outright and has said they're going to refuse from the day the man was elected that we're not working with you at all.
Right. That's right.
You know, I mean, it's just unbelievable that would occur. And any self-respecting Republican on the other side, they know that.
Yes,
but they're, you know, but they they kowtow to this movement that's happening within the Republican Party. Now,
Right.
Are the Democrats to blame? Absolutely. They had 2 years where they could have pushed in a lot of their programs.
Mm-hmm.
They had 2 years of controlling the House of Representatives, and they did nothing for 2 years, which is just another reflection on what the Democrats do. Nothing a lot of times.
Right.
Until it's too late and they
That's
start
right.
crying, and then et cetera. So, so I'm not here to say, to tell people that Obama is the best thing that's ever happened, in the country. The movie is not about that. The movie is about looking at the situation then in 2008 and now, and then making an intelligent decision.
Mm-hmm.
Which
Yes, sir.
is the worst of the two evils. And if they're both equal, then then you make your decision. But there's a lot of a backstory to go with about where you vote and who you vote. I mean, if the Supreme Court is taken over by by those forces in the Supreme Court, there's going to be some rollbacks.
Mm-hmm.
On a lot of hard-fought achievements.
Yes, sir.
Whether it's in civil rights, human rights, or whatever, I mean, already, the most glaring one of all in this so-called right-wing court, I mean, you can so-called right-wing court, is the Citizens United. I mean, how can you allow corporations to basically dictate,
Yeah.
who's going to be, the better off financial
Right.
candidate,
Right.
and that's, and that's in essence is buying an election,
Right. That's right.
and that's certainly not the American way, but so what we wanted to do with this picture was to, in looking back at all of the euphoria of the moment and the passion and the emotions and all that, we wanted to capture that again and rekindle that to show people what they had at that time,
Mm-hmm.
and is that momentum worth doing once more? And if it is, then here's a look at how that felt.
Right.
And if it isn't, then you got to look at the two choices
Mm-hmm.
and see which one you think is going to be the best one for you. Because I truly believe that all politics is local. In other words, what's going to be beneficial to your community? I've always been saying since I was a teenager that black folks should form their own political party.
Mm-hmm. Yes, sir.
Where you don't have 90-some% under one tent.
Right. Right.
That if we were monolithic enough to form our own party, then you could dictate to whatever party you were dealing with your demands.
Right. That's right.
And say, okay, if we're going to put this vote to you, these millions upon millions of vote to you, what are you going to do for us?
Right. Right.
And we never get to that point as a people.
Yes, sir.
Never.
That's right.
Certainly the Latinos are getting there.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly the Cubans
Right.
have been there
They've been
for
there.
years.
That's right. That's right.
So it's and you would think that we would have that kind of wherewithal to be. Yeah, I'm not saying we have to be monolithic in everything, but
Mm-hmm.
in some things you absolutely should be.
Right.
And something as simple as that. Whether you whatever you want to call it, the African American political party or whatever.
Right.
And then you come to the table, with power.
That's right.
And you don't come to the table with an already predictable situation on the part of the candidate.
That's
Well,
right.
we know we got them.
That's right.
We know we got them.
Yeah.
Only thing we got to do is to tell them, don't worry, we'll get around to you.
Right. That,
You know?
that goes back to what you were talking about earlier about education. We have fought, our people fought for the right to vote, but now we need to know how to learn how to use that vote most
Absolutely,
effectively.
absolutely. I mean, listen, I don't, look, I have extreme conservative views as well as extreme liberal views.
Yes,
you know what I mean? But you know, I don't, you know, I don't necessarily there are things that, you know, I say, you know, I can't be down with that. You know, I just can't be down with that. And but at the same time, you know, if you're going to be a so-called black conservative, and they seem to get more attention now, you know, I often wonder where you can't base your conservatism on. I came up. I'm a self-made man by my own bootstraps.
Right.
You know, a Clarence Thomas sort of ideal.
Right.
About, you know, well, first of all, somebody had to make the damn bootstraps.
Somebody made them. That's right.
Somebody had made them for you to get up there, and probably the person that probably made them was probably the black person. You know, they made the bootstraps for you to pull yourself up on. There's you know, there's a certain sense. I mean, listen, I don't mind saying, look, I always said when a black mayor gets in office, a black mayor's responsibility while he's in office as a mayor is to make as many black millionaires as he can.
Right.
While he's in office.
While he's in office.
Because and what that means is opening up the game for blacks to play in the game.
Yes, sir.
You know what I mean? It's opening up for black contractors to get those jobs.
Right.
Up, you know, and which we were being historically, you know, that old adage of, you know, we give them 5% of the action.
Yes,
you know, who wants 5% of the action when you live in the city and yourself, and particularly if it's a city with a high percentage of people of color.
Right.
You know, you don't want 5% of the action. You want to be an equal percent of it.
Right.
You know.
Right.
So, and now being a president, it's a little different. You got to be the president of everybody. But I never, you know, I mean. Sure, I was just as passionate and just as caught up in the moment as everyone else. But when I had an opportunity to sit back and think on it for a moment, and I said, you know, well, we just may come out of this with a good, you know, another feel good session. You know, because when it's all said and done, you know, in my opinion, a president is nothing but a hired hand for the people that really run the country.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
You know, and so these things are cyclical. You know, I mean, they you know, the Republicans get in for 8 years, and it's all about making money for the rich.
Right.
The Democrats get in for 4 years, 8 years. It's about social programs, and then it goes back again.
Right.
You know, so you know, who knows who's controlling that process?
Right.
But, you know, I not that I don't, that doesn't skirt Obama's responsibilities at all, but I think he's done some things on the quiet that his team has just not sold. You know, they certainly haven't sold to the American public so-called Obamacare and the benefits of that. You know what I mean? I mean, just the I mean, when you really take that Obamacare apart, and you know, it is Romneycare. You know, it's one of the same. It's the same program.
Right.
But the Republicans have done a better job at vilifying Obamacare than the Democrats have done in saying Obamacare is Romneycare.
Right.
You know, and so it's
that's right. It's a good point.
It's, you know, I don't know what as a people in general we really expected him to do. There were moments when I was upset that he wasn't coming off strong enough for me. You know, getting insulted like he was insulted on national television in the hallowed halls of Congress, being called a liar and not checking the guy.
Right.
You know, now imagine if that was George W. Bush.
Right.
And somebody said that. Bush would have said, well, meet me in the back room or something. You know what I mean? It'd have been half ignorant, but he would have said, you know, he would have said, well, you know, put on your cowboy boots and meet me in the back room or something. You know, but I thought he could have handled that moment without it being belligerent or with rancor. He could have simply said, well, now that you've made history to insult a standing president in the hallowed halls of Congress for the first time in American history. Why don't you stand up and be seen?
Mm-hmm.
Let the rest of the world take a look at the gentleman who just made history.
Right. That's right.
By calling the president a liar.
That's right.
You know, I mean, he could have reduced him to smithereens.
Right.
In a very diplomatic and classy way.
That's right. He had the mic.
But when he didn't, I said, okay, he's just opened the window for anybody to insult him now, publicly or whatever.
Yes, sir.
You know, and so you know, there's been some disappointments, but I like to frame this picture as a good night in the theater, a fun night in the theater, a funny night in the theater, an emotional night in the theater, an informative night in the theater, and an educational night in the theater. And and I think you'll walk out of there feeling good about yourself, feeling good about what was achieved, feeling good about what can be achieved this next time around. But I think you'll also come out with a sense of reality that you know, we do live in these United States of America, and there's a lot of things that goes behind doors that we're not privy to, and we'll never be privy to.
Right. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. That's beautiful. You know, I don't want to take up all your time. You're being very gracious. But I could keep asking questions. So for
I got a little more time. I got a little more time. Sure.
Okay. All right. So I know we could talk a little bit more about politics, but let's talk about it with the backdrop of what you accomplished with the corners and what has changed since 2000 on the corners.
Okay. Well, what we were able to do, Torre, at that time, and this was all that I was expecting to do, because that was my home city that I was, you know, doing that story on. But from a personal point of view, I didn't view it from a national scope kind of view. You know, it was a very personal story for me. I've lost countless members of my family to the drug game, the drug war, and drug addiction.
Yes, sir.
You know, countless members, cousins, brothers, sister. You know, so what I wanted to do with the corner at that time, my involvement in it, was to get the state of Maryland to recognize a real simple fact that most addicts, particularly when they're ready to give it a really hard shot at overcoming the addiction.
Yes, sir.
You've got to have, when they finally say I'm ready, you've got to have the facilities ready and waiting for them.
That's right. Yes, sir.
You can't say, well, come back 2 weeks from now.
Right.
You know,
right.
Or you can't say, well, we don't have a bed right now, or you didn't do your paperwork the right way. You left this out. You go back and redo, and go back and get this job statement, or this piece of paper, or that piece of paper. You have to have the facilities ready. You have to have them ready and open, and to take that person in. Because once you say no, it only takes 3 seconds. 3 seconds for that thing to kick back in and say, you know what, told you.
That's right. That's right.
And then the misery of getting rejected, the misery triggers the need to get high, to get over the misery of rejection.
That's right. Yes, sir.
And then you're right back in it.
Right.
You know? And so, and in that regard, Maryland, the state of Maryland, with, at the time, a Republican governor, have you, the state of Maryland did make many changes and start spending some money for rehab centers, you know, and making those beds available.
Yes,
however, when you think about the city of Baltimore, it still leads the nation per capita in heroin addicts. It still leads the nation per capita in HIV cases.
Mm-hmm.
And from what I'm hearing now, it's actually leading the nation per capita in a new wicked disease, a revival of a wicked disease in syphilis cases.
Wow. Wow.
And so, that city in itself has, major heroin and cocaine addiction problems. In the vast, wide scope of that problem in the country, the corner probably didn't do anything. It probably, I'm sure of all the millions of people over the course of those 6 hours that watched it and watched it again in reruns or rented it or bought the DVD, it still affects them. Mm-hmm. But it's there has never been, and I don't know if there will ever really be, a true war on drugs in the United States. Mm-hmm. It's part and parcel now of industry, and this is not me, Charles Dutton, spewing out any my own kind of doctrine or philosophy. It's obvious. What if you did clean up drugs tomorrow?
Right.
Then you'd have half of the prisons empty.
Right. That's right.
And then you'd have half of the guards unemployed.
Right.
You'd have half of the judges.
That's right.
Unemployed. You have half of the
Cities
police unemployed. Absolutely, it would be a complete shutdown. And so it's industry now, and it's the prison industrial complex now. And yeah, there's been a couple of cracks in the armor of crack cocaine versus powdered cocaine. There's been a couple of rulings in the recent weeks of ridding the sentence structure of that, of that draconian law. Mm-hmm. But we're kind of watching, and just speaking of, your hometown, every month or every week, if I read the totalities of the casualties,
right,
young people in Chicago, it's heart-wrenching.
Yes,
just,
sir. It is.
Just heart-wrenching, and all just, the 16, 17, 18,
right,
19-year-olds
yes,
that all of this promise,
right,
being
that's
just
right,
obliterated,
yes,
and
sir.
You wonder, when is that, when is that going to come to an end, and how do we do that, but then when you look at how it's not really being addressed,
right,
from the larger picture, the governmental larger picture, it's it's shameful. Listen. Everybody in every inner city knows that the school system is wretched, in a wretched state. So any politician, to me, in my opinion, who fights against our kids going to private schools or charter schools, or a community forming their own schools, and their own philosophies, and educating their own. Anybody who's against that, to me, is part and parcel of the problem.
Yes, sir. Yes, sir.
It's like, and I understand school teachers. I understand it's a hard, tough job, but I also understand that if you tell me that 85% of the dollars go to teacher salaries and 15% goes to the students, there's something wrong in that picture.
That's right.
There's something wrong in that picture. So on one hand, you can't say, well, I'm going to send my kids to private school, but I'm going to, I'm going to praise public schools, but I'm going to send my kids to private school.
Right.
It's, look, I go through them schools. I speak at them schools,
yes,
know, and there's no discipline. If you just could get discipline, it'll be a little better. But there's no discipline, There, just a little quick story. I went to one of the juvenile institutions that I was in at 12, 13, 14, 15. I went back a couple years ago to speak. And And the funny thing about it, as soon as me and my cousin got there, and we both were in there as kids, we had to go through a gate with, you know, with barbed wired gate and all that. I was saying, man, this wasn't. We was in there. It was like a farm, you know.
Right.
You could escape if you wanted to. You know, you had to go walk through the damn woods for 3 days to get back into Baltimore City. But, you know, but I said, this what happened. But it was a little prison. But then when we got inside, and I saw the people that was running it, the staff, you couldn't tell the staff from the kids. You know, in other words, you know, in dress, in demeanor, in spoken language, you couldn't, you know, you couldn't tell a difference.
Yes,
you know,
sir.
and I said, well, wait a minute, hold on. What do they have? What do they have? What is the alternative image that's being presented to them here?
Right.
You know, and that's nothing. That's not a disparaging remark against the hip hop nation. But I'm just saying, if you're there to instill in a juvenile delinquent who's 12, 13 years old, and you're trying to distill in them an image of respect and positiveness, etc., then you can't necessarily have your cap turned backwards, and you know your pants hanging off your ass.
That's right. You absolutely
You know,
right.
you got to present a different kind of image for them.
That's right.
You know,
and
and
you remind me of this just a few days ago here in Chicago. Now, I grew up in the streets, you know, so I've had, you know, I'm familiar with streets and police officers, and I'm comfortable. But I saw, I was hitting the corner and saw a police officer with cornrows, and it startled me. I didn't know. I was confused for just about 2 or 3 seconds. I didn't know what I was looking at.
Right.
A thug or a police officer.
Right.
So I know exactly what you're saying.
You know, and so I know what you mean, because I was the same way too. I couldn't tell who was the inmates and who weren't.
Right.
You know, and
the rules break down. You know.
Yeah. And because when I was there, you had a distinct difference.
Yes,
you know, the
right.
cottage parent was the cottage parent.
Right.
You know, and they tried to instill in you, you know, and you know, and then it wasn't all about necessarily that you were going to walk away and wear a suit.
Right.
You know, the rest of your life, but what you were going to get in the cottage parent of my day, you were going to get a sense of purpose. You were going to get a sense of right and wrong.
That's right.
You were going to get a sense of, you know, you need to go to school. You need to educate yourself.
Right.
You know, and no, all of y'all can't be rappers.
Right.
You know,
Period.
all of y'all can't be basketball. All of y'all ain't gonna make it in the NBA. You know what I mean? You need to learn how to read and write first.
That's right.
You know, and so so it was, you know, it was disheartening, and I think it's the same way with you know, with our situation, and that's why it's so important when going back to our earlier conversation about images. You know what I mean?
Yes, sir.
You know, we're viewed around the rest of the world. You know what I mean? I mean,
That's right.
when American television is just not in America, American television is viewed around the entire
world.
planet.
That's right.
You know, and when the images are saturated in those negative ways,
Right.
you know, people look at it that
That's
way.
right. That's
you
right.
know, and yeah, you know, we like to say that we're the cultural purveyors of society and the rest of the world. That what we do as African Americans, everybody picks up on and does and copies, etc. And yeah, that, you know, you could say that's right. You know what I mean? It's been that way for a long, long time. But it's also, but that also, like everything else, you start off good and then you grow bad. You know, so 40 years ago or 50 years ago, when and the great jazz musicians, et cetera, when the rest of the world starts picking up on being, you know, black folks being cool and hip, and you know, and you can go to Paris and, you know, and as a jazz musician and live great over there, and you know, and do better than you can in America, and everybody wants to be hip and black, you know. Yeah, but then eventually those images, you know, if they start to deteriorate and they become negative, then you know, people, you know, look, years ago, man, I had a guy. I think he might have been from, you know, he might have been from Pakistan, he might have been from India, whatever. But it was at a 7-Eleven store, and this was in the '90s. This was when I was doing rock, and I went in. It was out in a little county. I was staying outside of Baltimore. 2, 3 in the morning. I wanted some orange juice or something. Got up and went to 7-Eleven, some Gatorade or something, and the guy followed me around, you know.
Wow.
And I'm looking at the guy, you know, and I'm saying,
Right.
well, he said, you buy, you hurry up and buy. And it was right out of, you know, it was right out of Menace to Society movie,
Right.
you know
Yes,
what I
sir.
mean? Before the movie was out, but it was right out of that, you know. And I'm saying, chill out, man, you know. So, and he obviously didn't know who I was, but he was, and so then, when I finally got it, you know, he was, and so, you know, he was so belligerent. I said, now see there, I said, now y'all come over this country. You ain't been over here but 3 days, probably.
Mm-hmm.
And already you think you got a superior attitude.
Right.
And then he looked at me and he said something so profound that I had to laugh, but it wasn't profound in the sense of how negative it was, but I didn't even want to cuss him out or slap him. I just started laughing. He said, no, you got it all wrong. You cheaper than me.
Wow.
And I said to myself, you cheaper than me.
Wow.
In other words, somebody told him in what little village that he came, before he came over here,
Right.
that them niggas are the worst of the worst of the worst.
Right.
And he came over here with that in his head.
In his head.
You know? And I remember telling my buddies, you cheaper than me. And we all laughed at first, but then we all got quiet.
Right. Yes, sir.
And thinking about it, you know? And we said, man, just that little moment right there says a whole lot
Right.
about when people arrive in this country.
That's right.
You know, and what they're told,
Right.
or what they're conditioned, or what they're saturated by the media to think about us.
Right. That's right. Yes, sir.
You know, and and I said to myself, now he probably coming from somewhere that didn't have any running water or anything,
Right.
and I'm cheaper than him.
Right.
You know? So it was like, I said, okay, but no, man, the corner was groundbreaking insofar as the kind of television it was. You know, I had nothing to do with The Wire.
Mm-hmm.
The Wire was a sort of a kind of an extension of it. It was,
Right.
you know, but they asked me to do The Wire.
Uh-huh.
But I took the position on The Wire was that why do you want to continue with this storyline?
Right.
It's, you know, I said, but we do more than just shoot drugs and sell drugs.
Right.
Why don't you do a 6-hour miniseries? Why don't you do a series on black lawyers, black doctors, black
Right.
scientists, you know, whatever. I said you can make it as soap opera-ish as you want, you know.
Right.
And Jamal said, but why don't you just change the story, the subject matter, and do something else? Now the guy that wrote The Wire was the same guy that wrote The Corner.
Okay.
But they asked me to direct the Wire, to start off the first 4, 5, 6 episodes, and to star in it. But I said, you know, I said, listen, we already won everything that you could win, and got all the accolades that you could get with The Corner.
Mm-hmm.
Now I'll guarantee you this: you're not going to be nominated for anything with The Wire. I don't care how long you stay on, because the industry is going to already feel that they've given you an award for this show.
Right, right.
And so, as you know, when you look at The Wire, they didn't do anything but steal my style. They stole the whole style that I used for The Corner and
Right.
put it into The Wire. You know,
Right.
they changed it. They changed the look a little bit different, but they, you know, they.
Yep.
And so to me, although to me The Wire had its fans, but the difference between the two shows was that the Corner was about drug addiction,
Mm-hmm.
and The Wire was about drug dealing.
Right, right.
You know, and everything that entails, politics, society, and everything else.
Right.
But you know, those were the major differences.
Yes, sir.
And people still think that I had something to do with The Wire, and I always tell folks, no, the umbilical cord was severed right after The Corner.
After The
you know,
Corner, yes, sir.
The Wire had its own people involved in it, and et cetera. You know, but my position was why don't we do something else? Why
Yes,
don't we
sir.
do a whole nother topic, a whole nother subject, and a whole nother image
Mm-hmm.
of us? You know, but that's the way they went with that.
Yes, sir. Man, beautiful. It's been incredible talking to you, brother. And I must say, although I love Dwayne Johnson, you are the original Rock.
And you know what? It's funny you should say that because I remind people. I said, no, I'm not the Rock. I'm Rock.
R-O-C.
No the in it. I said that's the wrestler. You know, the Rock is the wrestler. I said I'm just plain Rock. You know.
Right.
But I also let people know too that that's my real nickname.
Yes, sir.
You know, I was Rock long before I was Rock.
From the boxing days.
Yeah, absolutely. I was from my old boxing days, old street days, you know. So, and the funny, how we came up with the name of the show, we were sitting around in the meeting, myself and several producers, we were trying to come up with names. Mm-hmm. After we shot it, and we were watching the episode, you know, the pilot episode, we couldn't think of any name. And then one of the producers said, Rock, why don't we just call it Rock and the hell with it, let's get out of here. And so I said, well, yeah, the character does kind of look like a rock, so let's go with it. And then in the early stages of the show, if I'm traveling around the country and people would see me when the show was on the air, and if I was, no matter where I was, in L.A. or the East Coast, West Coast, whatever, and people say, hey, Rock, how you doing? I used to actually think at one time, Torre, that I knew them. Because I'm thinking that they're calling me Rock from my real nickname. And they're shaking my hand. How you doing, man? And I'm like saying, "Hey, how you doing?" And I'm trying to act like I'm trying to not let them think that I don't remember them. Right, and I'm saying in my mind, "Who the hell is this?" You know. And then a couple minutes later, it'll be, "Oh, they fans." You know, they responded to the TV show. They responded.
Right.
You know, and so that was the funny thing. You know, of doing it. And you know, it's I've been asked a lot of times, you know, to come back and do half-hour television, but I've always said no, because it'll be really tough to top Rock,
right? You
know, and not that I would be looking to top it, but you know, I wouldn't be able to top it if I mean I could top it if they really let me do what I wanted to do, you know.
Right.
But anything short of that, you know, insofar as a working class environment, a working class storyline, a working class family, you know, it would be really difficult to top it. And so I've always said no to a half hour about coming back to doing it. I'm actually, I'm not really prepared to talk about it right now, but I'm actually in discussions with another possible half-hour show that would be within the same realm of Rock, a working class, but a very different kind of storyline. You know, but I mean, you know, it's funny. The business is so fickle. You know, if you do drama, they don't think you can do comedy. If you do comedy, they don't think you can do drama. You know, so when I was doing Rock, you know, I mean, before Rock, you know, I was doing, you know, dramatic movies, and then when I did Rock, then like, you know, then when Rock was over, I couldn't get a drama role because they thought this guy's a half-hour comedy guy, you know. But you know, I started in the theater, so I was able to do, you know.
You played a serial killer too, didn't you?
What was that?
You played a serial killer too, didn't you?
I mean, you know, every now and then I'll do villains and surprise people, you know.
Right.
For instance, when I did Gothica, and when Halle Berry asked me to do Gothica with her, we were actually shooting. We were both shooting respective pictures in Montreal. She was working on a picture. She was getting ready to do Gothica, and I was finishing a film called Secret Window with Johnny Depp. And I was almost finished, and so she said, well, they were looking for an older actor, you know, older than me to, you know, older than her to play her husband. And so when I read the script, I said, you know, I'm going to do this because I said I'll be able to get away with doing this character because no one would expect my persona to be the villain.
Right.
You know, and the proof was in the pudding. When the movie came out, the weekend it came out, on that Monday, I got a call from my mother, right? I think I was in L.A. at the time or doing something else. And she called me. She said, you know, I saw that movie Saturday afternoon. I said, which one? She said, Gothica. I said, how you like it? She said, I just called you to let you know next time I see you, I'm going to smack the taste out of you. my baby.
Right.
Why she hacked up my baby like he didn't do nothing, and then kind of find out that I was the villain all along, you know. So she said she was gonna slap the taste out of my mouth. So you know, so occasionally it's nice to you know, to play the villain, you know. And but you know, I've kind of you know, enjoyed the. You know, I still get, you know, people still see me and still talk about the little scene from Menace to Society about the hunt is on. And,
right,
you know,
right.
And I forget, you know, and I forget, you know, you forget, as an actor, you forget about those scenes,
right.
You know, and then and people recite
yeah.
them for you, then you say, oh yeah, you know, and so it's been it's been fun, and but the one other thing I wanted to talk about is the film that I shot in Philadelphia. It's called Must Be the Music, and I like I said, I got some young partners on this, and they're really good brothers, and a Muslim brother and a Christian brother. They both were out of the music industry in Philly. And so I came up with a story about an old school fictional Philadelphia music mogul who's been around since the 60s and 70s, been very, very successful, and he has a record label now, but with young people on it, on the label, the hip-hop generation. But he himself, being old school, he refuses to move into the 21st century. He just won't do it. Yes, I mean, he's so old school. He don't even say we're going to make a CD. He said let's go make a goddamn record.
Make a record.
You know. And so, right. And he's still got a turntable in his office. You know. So.
So this ain't Kenny Gamble, is it?
Look, you know, it's funny. The only thing I knew about Kenny Gamble was just as out of Baltimore, the Philadelphia sound, you know, and then what you read in the Ebony and the Jet, you know.
Right.
But when I wrote the script and was showing it to the Philadelphia folks, they would say, "Oh yeah, we know who this is." And I don't know nothing about it, Kenny, but you know, the music business is a music business, and what it is about the greed and corruption and the treachery in that game, you know, and he's the kind of character who corrupts everything he touches.
Yes, sir.
And when it's and the thing is that, but it's also a redemptive story too. But only in his case, when he finally decides to come to a spiritual realm, it's a little bit too late. You know. And as a matter of fact, his sister, who is spiritual, who's has a storefront Pentecostal church. When he goes to her and talks of all the wickedness that he has done over the course of his life, she says, "Look," she said, "the only thing you have left to negotiate is a cool spot in hell."
Wow.
You know, and but when, you know, and so, you know, because he started off as a gangster life and cut into the music business, but he never left the gangster life alone. So he ran it. But it's not like a Suge Knight character or anything like that. I actually described him as the Don King of the music industry. You know?
Yes, sir.
And flamboyant, big, revered yet reviled, you know, desired yet despised, you know, you know, he can hand out $100,000 just as a free money to the organizations, and then he'll take $500,000 somewhere else.
Yes, sir.
He'll take $500,000 from somebody else. So it's a complex character, but it's full of great music, and for folks who like the Martin Scorsese movies like Goodfellas and Casino, they'll really like this. You know, and it's a film you really kind of don't see that, you know, that we do. You know, it's not a lightweight movie. It's not, you know, it's not a romantic comedy. It's a hard-edged film with a lot of values. You know, and but we're gonna try to get that out in the fall. But we're gonna do it the way we wanted to do it, because we did it independently, just like I did, and Barry and Eckerson and I did the Obama Effect, and get a groundswell of support and excitement from the internet, and then we'll go from there with it.
Yes, sir, man. Well, I look forward to hearing more about it, and
Well, I'll tell you what I want you to do, Tori. I want to give you my personal info, and if you send me your email, I will email you a trailer.
Okay, absolutely.
Of Must Be the Music.
Absolutely, beautiful, beautiful. Well, thank you, man. We appreciate all that you do, brother, and have done. The integrity that you do it with, and a lot of people, like I said, when I posted on Facebook, a lot of people just wanted to say congratulations and thank you for the roles you've done, and several people, especially for the Rock and the Corner. So we appreciate it, and thank you so much for coming on the Bean Soup Show.
All right, my man. All right, brother. Looking forward to shaking your hand too.
Yes, sir.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Well, just let me know.